Hello, everyone. How are you today? Welcome to another episode of Age Graceful Soulful Eat. How is it going? Well, I'm doing pretty good. I yesterday did an episode on fried chicken wings, and I had a really large package of chicken wings, and so I saved half of them. And I'm going to use those today to make some homemade chicken and dumplings. Yes, homemade. I was taught about 35 years ago how to make these dumplings by my grandmother, Virginia Mae. And her recipe calls for 1 egg to every cup of flour used. So I'm just going to do a real small batch. I think I only had maybe something like 10, 12 wings left, and they're already pre-seasoned because I seasoned them along with the chicken wings that I did for frying last night. I have those on the stove boiling. They've been boiling now for a good hour, so they're nice and fork tender. And if I don't hurry up and get these dumplings into the pot with the chicken, they're going to completely fall apart. But that's okay, because people like to have a little bit of meat in with their dumplings. It's March, it's still a little bit chilly outside, so a nice bowl of warm chicken and dumplings is going to go down so well tonight. So let's get this started. So I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit so that you can see the ingredients that I have here on my countertop. Okay, so I have, first to start off, I just have a large bowl that I'm going to mix everything up in. And I have my mixing spoon. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm using gold medal flour. That's a national brand. It doesn't have to be gold medal, but I'm going to use the rest of this in the bag to flour my sheets that I have on the table. It's actually baking sheets, but I'm going to put them on the table to put the dough on, and then everything can be cleaned up much easier. So I have my 2 cups of flour. I also have two eggs. These are large eggs, and I got these from Sam's Club. It's nice. I get the whole case. I think it's about 7.5 dozen in the case. And the way I bake cakes and cheesecakes and things like that, and my son likes eggs, they last about a month. I have a stick of butter here that I'm going to use to season the broth and add a little bit of more texture and flavor to that juice that is around the chicken. I have black pepper. I have a little bit of garlic powder, and then I also have, today I'm using jar chicken soup base. I usually use another one that comes in a kind of short fat container. Let me show you what I'm talking about. You might see this in the soup aisle. This one is the ham flavored. I have ham flavored, beef flavored. This is by L.B. Jameson, and I get this from the grocery store. I like this. Is got like a oily texture to it, but it can be stored in your cupboard, and it's really flavorful. I like this ham-based one when I'm doing like beans and black-eyed peas. It really tastes good. You don't even really need a piece of smoked meat in your peas if you use this base here. But I'm out of the chicken one by this company, so I'm going to use this one that I found at Big Lots. They had a few spices, and I think their spices were like $1.25 each. So I'm going to add a little bit of this to my chicken broth that's on the stove. So to get started, one more ingredient. Let me go down here and get this. I like the flavor of celery. So I'm not going to put big pieces in. I put a couple of ribs of celery into my Ninja, and I got them real fine. You can see around the edges here. And this is going to cook at the same time the dumplings cook. But what I'm going to do now is add my celery to my pot and the butter, and then I'm going to bring the camera over so that you can see what I'm doing. So let me just set this down to the side and let me adjust my camera so you can see as I add these extra ingredients. Okay, so I kind of put the pot down on low. I didn't want all my broth to boil out or evaporate, I should say, before I got my dough together. Something else I did too is I took out a full cup of broth and just set it to the back of the stove so that it could cool. I'm going to be using that broth to kind of bring my dough ball together. So I have, like I say, about 10-12 pieces of chicken wings in this pot. Into that, now I'm going to add my celery. Just going to take the blade out of my Ninja. Put that in the sink. So I'll add celery. Celery really gives all meat, poultry and beef, a really nice flavor. So I'm going to get all of this good stuff into my pot. Okay, that's my celery. And now I'm going to add some of this chicken soup base. And I'm going to be pretty liberal with it because I'm not adding any more salt to the dish. Maybe just a little bit of garlic powder and a little bit of black pepper, but this has salt in it, so I'm not going to add any additional salt because, as I said, the wings were seasoned last night when I did the fried chicken. So I'm adding maybe about, I would say maybe 2 tablespoons. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. But that's about 2 tablespoons. I don't want to get it too salty because you cannot remove the salt once you've added it. So now I'm going to add a little bit of black pepper. And this is like a medium grind or large grind of black pepper. I don't know if I shake some in my hand if you can see. This is some big black pepper. Can you see that? And so I'm just going to use maybe a half of, well, maybe a teaspoon. I would say a teaspoon. And I'm going to use maybe like a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. And again, I'm just going to eyeball it. I don't want a real strong flavor of garlic in my dumplings. I just want, to give the dumplings a little bit of flavor because they are doughy, and you have to let that flour cook out. One last thing. I would like to add a half a stick of butter, and this is just going to make the broth extra rich. So I'm just taking my fork and splitting this butter and adding it to the pot. And I'm going to take my spoon now and stir these things into my pot. And then that butter should melt down and make a nice rich broth. I'm going to bring the camera over now so that you can see what this broth is looking like and the chicken as it boils. Okay, I hope that's a good vantage point for you, just to see the chicken wings in that broth. And I'll cut the stove up some once I get my dough ball all made up. But I just wanted you to take a look at what that's looking like right now. It's just a small batch, just up under a half a pot of chicken and broth. and I'm using the 2 cups of water. So now I'm gonna put my camera back down here, and I'm gonna turn towards the counter space. And I apologize, I'm doing everything kind of by myself today. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to crack my eggs into the bowl. And like I said, there's 2 eggs. And what I want to do is kind of scramble the eggs. And that will make them light and fluffy. So I have the eggs here in my bowl, and I'm just going to scramble them. Okay, I think the whites and the yellows are very well mixed right now. You can see that. Yeah, they're mixed up pretty good. Okay, I'm going to come back here and readjust my camera because I need to come and work a little bit on the table here. Just need to get a few things out of my way. Okay, let me adjust my camera. Hold on, guys. Okay, as you can see here, I have 2 baking sheets that I have lined up together. I'm going to roll my dumpling dough out on these baking sheets, and then I can just pick them up, take them to the sink, and it'll be an easy cleanup. So now I'm going to bring over my bowl with the egg and my 2 cups of flour, and I'm going to add the flour into this bowl. And I don't need to add any seasoning to this mixture here because the broth is already seasoned. And by the time you that your dumplings cook, they're going to absorb the flavor of that broth. So now I'm just setting my spoon into the center of the bowl, and I'm going to slowly work this egg into the flour. And then I'll begin to add the broth that I reserved at the back of the stove a little bit at a time because you want to form a nice bowl. I probably won't even use that full cup, but I just reserved it just in case. I wasn't sure how much I might need. And so this is starting to come together. And I have egg just about on every bit of this flour. The egg helps the flour to rise and make a nice dumpling. And dumplings, I would say, they're a comfort food, and dumplings, I think, to me, they're a southern noodle. They're thicker than traditional pasta, but they're so good because they come out kind of creamy. The excess flour turns into like a white roux, which is like a gravy. So now I'm going to grab my broth from the back of the stove, and I'm just going to add it a little bit at a time. And work this into the flour and egg mixture. And making dumplings, it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of time, but it's well worth it. And I used to love when I was a little girl, and on maybe like a Sunday morning, we would talk my grandmother into making the dumplings, but she would never use chicken like I do. She would always get a hen. And when I was a little girl, there was a market, and you could go and pick out the live hen or chicken of your choice. And then they would take it in the back and get it prepared for you. I'm not going to describe the sounds that I heard. Yeah, I'm just not going to describe the sounds that I heard, but I remember walking home from that meat market, and I was holding the package, and it was still warm. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't know if there's still a place in Detroit where you can have that done. Everything is so commercialized now. You just pretty much go and pick up your chicken or your hens if you want one from a grocery store. And I rarely see hens at the grocery store anymore. I see chickens, but I rarely see a hen. A hen is a little larger. It has a little bit more fat on it, and I believe it has the extra fat because the hens need that extra fat because they, lay eggs, so they need to be healthy. But I guess you have some hens that lay eggs so that you can have scrambled eggs, and then there's some hens that are butchered so that you can have wonderful dishes like chicken and dumplings. So as you see, I have formed my dough ball, and it's very sticky. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get my flour, and I'm just going to put flour on my surface of these baking sheets. And now I'm going to roll my dough out onto the flour. And I can't get every little bit because it's so sticky, but I'll get as much as I can. And this works better if you kind of flour your hands. And you can use a rolling pin, but I've done this for so many years, I kind of like pat it out with my hand. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more flour on top just so I can work with it. Before I do that, I'm going to grab a butter knife so I can make my cuts. Now I'm going to cut my pot up to receive these dumplings because I want a rapid boil in my pot. Getting some flour on my hands, and now I'm just going to work with this dough and get flour all on top, on the bottom, around the edges. And now I'm going to begin to flatten out the dough. And you want the dough as flat as you can get it, because if not, your dumplings are going to be like super duper thick. And I might convert to my rolling pin. I think I will. Let me grab that quickly. Rolling pin, and I'm just going to put a little flour on the rolling pin, and now I'm just going to gently roll this dough out. And like I said, you want to get it as thin as possible. And you see it starting to take up quite a bit of the space here on this baking sheet. I want it thin, but not super thin. See how I have it here? And wherever you see height, just go ahead and press that a little bit harder. And you don't want to press so much that you get a hole in your dough. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Can you see that? All rolled out here. So now what I'm gonna do, maybe I just better lay that there. I have a butter knife. I don't want to use a sharp knife on my baking sheet. And what I do is I cut down lengthwise and make strips. And this is exactly how my grandmother used to do it. And once you do all your strips, oh, I hear my broth boiling behind me. Maybe I better cut it down till I'm ready. I don't want to lose my broth. And I did have some broth left over. So let me pour that back into the pot real quick. And that'll help my volume stay up some. And then if I need to later, I can always add a little bit of hot water if I think that the volume of fluid has decreased to where I'm not going to get a nice gravy, but I rarely have that problem. And I try to work pretty quickly. I would say that to cook the dumplings takes about a half hour to 45 minutes. Again, you're working with flour and egg, so you do want to cook that out. You don't want it to taste doughy. So now I have my strips. So now I'm going to come this way and go widthwise and make these strips cubes. And you just kind of place your knife at the edge and get your cube, and each cube is going to be about 1.5 inches or 1 inch long. And when I pick them up to place them in the pot, I usually like flatten them just a little bit more if I think they're feeling sort of thick. This is going to give me a lot of dumplings. And I have a girlfriend or co-worker, I should say, girlfriend and co-worker. If I make dumplings and I don't bring her some, I better not mention that I made them. So I know tonight, because she's been asking. Hello, Donna D. I'm going to be bringing you some of these dumplings. So I just wanted to give you a shout out. Okay, so now I have my cubes. And from there you pick them up like this and you can drop them into the pot. So what I'm going to do is rinse my hands off, come back and move the camera so you can see how I drop them into the pot. Give me 1 second. Grab my towel. I don't want to get dough all on my camera or flour, so I just want to rinse my hands really quickly. And then I'll put the camera at a vantage point so you can see the next step. Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to cut this up a little bit more so I can kind of hear it. And now, this is the part that I'm not really crazy about when it comes to making dumplings, is picking up the dumplings one by one and dropping them in the pot. And you want to make sure you got a pretty good boil going. So I need to bring this back up so that they don't clump together. So that's the reason you have to put them in individually. And it takes a few minutes, but like I said, it's well worth the time and the patience that you put into this dish. So now I'm going to start to pick them up. I'm going to put quite a few in my hand, and I'm going to show you. And they're picking up so easy off of this baking sheet. See, I have a handful of dumplings. So now I'm going to come over to the pot and just drop them in. And like I said, if they feel a little thick, just kind of give them a couple of smooshes. Just kind of pinch them to thin them out, because they're going to plump up anyway because of the egg. And mine are pretty nice size. They're not, you know, too thick. And I'm going to continue to do this until I get all my dumplings in the pot. I'm not going to make you watch me do this process, but I will come back once I get everything in the pot. I'll be back, guys. Okay, guys, I'm back. I've cleaned up my mess. I have all the dumplings in the pot, and the pot has been going now for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to bring the camera over to the stove so you can see how things are looking. Okay? Give me 1 second to get it over here. All right, I'm gonna lift my lid. You see the steam. And so now I'm gonna show you my pot. Look at those chicken and dumplings. Oh boy. I'm probably gonna let the pot go about another 15 or 20 minutes or so. I want to make sure that all the flour is cooked out of the dumplings. I'm going to get my spoon here and try not to drop my camera, and I'm just going to stir this pot of dumplings. And I'm using a nice heavy non-stick pot, and I have a nice gravy beginning to formulate. Oh, and it smells so good, and it reminds me of when I was a little girl, when my grandmother would fix these chicken and dumplings. So the next time you see me, guys, I'll be dishing up a bowl of Grandma Jen's Southern style chicken and dumplings. Okay, I will be back. Okay, guys, I'm back. The dumplings have been cooking now for about 40 minutes. When I first put them into the pot, they were a little, what you would call maybe tight. And so as they begin to cook, the dumplings do get softer and they get tender. So I have Mr. G helping me now. So we're going to focus in on this pot. And Mr. G, if you could come a little bit closer. Oh boy, don't those look good. I'm going to take my spoon and stir. And I just want to show you the broth or gravy that the dumplings made. Look how rich this is. So I have my bowl here, and I'm going to dish up a few, just so you can see what these dumplings look like. And I'm going to get a piece of chicken and put in the bowl with it. Yummy. Let me add 1 or 2 more. 1 more is good. And look at this. Nice, steamy, hot chicken and dumplings. I appreciate you spending some time with me this evening while I made these. Again, my grandmother's recipe, Virginia Mae. but we called her Grandma Jen for short. And I'm just going to get a little spoon and taste these. Get a little piece, and they're really hot. So I'm going to try my best not to burn my mouth. I just want to make sure they're done and all the flour is cooked out. And I believe it is. I've been cooking these long enough. This brings back many memories. I appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with me this evening for another episode of Age Graceful Soulful Eats. All right, you all have a good evening. Thank you for watching. Bye.